Recently on this series, I talked about the dangerous role that Chinese government censorship has increasingly played on entertainment media created in America. And look, it's easy to understand that censorship is bad when we're talking about restricting speech that's critical of repressive governments like China, Venezuela, or North Korea. We can even laugh, or maybe cry, at some of the more ridiculous examples of thin-skinned despots stifling their people's creativity and access to a broader world of art and ideas. But sadly, free speech is under attack in America, too. In our case, it's not so much that our government is trying to silence people. We're fortunate enough to live in a country with fairly strong legal protections for freedom of speech, but we are facing a virulent aspect of our culture that wants to cancel people for saying anything they don't like.
You are not.
All right, so canceling isn't anti-free speech. All right, so can we please drop the canceling nonsense? It hasn't really worked for many things. Many of the people that are canceled are still doing extremely well, so it's not an attack on free speech because they still have their free speech, and they gain money off of playing that, oh no, my free speech is under attack, I'm being canceled. Oh, anti-free speech, give me money, right? And plenty of these people are making tons of money.
Listening, you were disgusting, and now I want your job to be taken from you.
It's way too common now to see people trying to preemptively shut down anyone they disagree with, or even anyone they just assume they disagree with.
Would you like to hear the answer or not?
No! Are you gonna cancel?
Most of the people pushing to silence one person after the next genuinely believe that their intentions are good, so they feel completely justified in shouting down speakers, deplatforming, and even doxing their supposed enemies online. But
So doxing, I'm not necessarily for, but protesting a speech, being loud, being disruptive, that's perfectly fine. That's you exercising your free speech, right? So these, the joke is the freeze peach warriors don't actually care about free speech. They just want to be able to say shitty things without repercussions, right?
Maintaining a strong legal and cultural environment that supports free speech is not only essential to the expression of ideas and values we all think are good, it is even more importantly the foundation for debate and criticism of the ideas and values we think are bad. Fortunately, one of the best ways to start those kinds of debates is comedy. Taika Waititi's Oscar-winning film Jojo Rabbit is one of my favorite movies of the last several years, and it's an absolutely perfect example of what I mean. With that in mind, welcome to Out of Frame. Jojo Rabbit is the story of a 10-year-old boy growing up in Germany at the peak of World War II. His father is gone, his mother is usually at work, and he doesn't have many friends. Like most of us, he wants to feel like he belongs. Unfortunately, Jojo's entire life has been steeped in Nazi propaganda, and his impressionable young mind bought into it all. Hitler Youth, false information about the war effort, and insane anti-Semitic rhetoric.
Where's the horns?
Jojo is so convinced that everything he's been told by the government since he was born is true that he even turns Adolf Hitler into his own imaginary best friend.
I thought I was your best friend. Yoki, you're my second best friend. First place is reserved for the Führer.
All right, and so as I've seen this video before, and I don't want it to run on too long here without interjecting, the thesis he's building to is that, well, they use Nazi imagery in a film about Nazism, and if you put hate speech laws into place, you can't do that anymore. And we'll get to the one example that he uses, or that he tries to use here when we get through, and we'll debunk that fairly easily.
The thing is, underneath the blind fanaticism, Jojo is really just a sweet kid who doesn't understand that everything he's been conditioned to believe is a lie. And anyone who might have told him the truth is either in hiding, in jail, or dead. If that all sounds like a really serious movie, well, it is. Except it's also a comedic satire, and in my opinion, one of the funniest movies of the last decade.
You okay?
Jojo Rabbit is an amazing mix of the most absurdist, offensive, slapstick elements of a Mel Brooks movie, combined with the innocence and sincerity of something like Roberto Benigni's Life is Beautiful. And that's precisely what makes it an excellent vehicle for criticizing Nazi ideology. Even so, it's a movie that took a long time to make. In fact, it couldn't have been made at all in a lot of countries, possibly including Germany. It's filled with...
Wrong. I mean, they're ignoring a pretty popular film in Germany that came out. It's called I'm Back, I think, is the title of the movie. Let's pull that up quick. Wrong page. I'll do this up here off the different screen while we're talking here. Hitler film. Look Who's Back is the name of the film, right? So that was released in Germany, was one of the I think top 2 or 3 films when it on opening day when it came out over there. But that's a whole comedy, a whole German comedy. It's based on an earlier book that sold wildfire, like, you know, I think within a year or two, like over 1 million copies within Germany, where Hitler is magically brought back to life at the very end, where he kills himself and is buried and burned in that location. And so he comes back, and people think he's being a comedian, right? And so he eventually rises up to power, and the film ends on him regaining control of Germany. And that was released in Germany, where it's much more anything than that than here. And it's a critique, it's a satire, it's a of how Hitler would, a person like Hitler would rise to power in these countries, right? It's a pretty, I believe to be a pretty poignant depiction of how something like that would happen. So he's just wrong. He's lying to you in this here that Jojo Rabbit couldn't be shown in Germany or made in Germany, right?
With offensive symbolism, scenes, and dialogue that would fit most people's definition of hate speech outside of their satirical context. But laws against this kind of speech often don't and can't make an effective distinction.
So hold on. Prohibits publishing threatening, abusive, or insulting content. So how would Jojo Rabbit fall into that? I don't know why we're talking about New Zealand here instead of the US, but cannot meet in public places and hold threatening conversations. That wouldn't fit Jojo Rabbit. Use abusive words in places where others can quote you for publishing. That I don't think is talking about movies either.
Between comedy and serious expressions of ideology. As a result, publishers and social media companies who need to comply with those laws frequently block satirical...
U.S. versus the world as big tech faces the specter of limiting speech online.
Posts and lump criticism of an idea together with support, making it harder for people to publicly discuss and debate difficult subjects. In some cases, people are being fined or arrested.
So, how are those examples? Alec Jones, Louis Farrakhan, Milo Yiannopoulos, and I think Lauren Chen was the other
subjects.
one? Oh, Laura
In
Loomer.
some cases,
where are those guys criticizing any of the ideas without spreading the nasty ideas? Right? Those 4 people right there are pretty notorious for spreading shitty ideas, hateful rhetoric and language and all that other stuff. Right? So if those people are getting knocked off the sites, then these policies are working, right? Now, obviously with, I do YouTube and stuff like that, and I know plenty of other YouTube creators that try to create videos against people like the aforementioned 4 people on there, and they'll get picked up in the algorithm, right? And that's an issue, leaving it up to machine learning that's not right yet, right? That doesn't understand it yet.
people are being fined or arrested just for making offensive jokes, as if...
And the the Nazi dog salute, right? So a lot of this, Count Dankula. I disagree with him being fine and doing all that other stuff, but the way they try to downplay what it is when they look at, because who's this headline? Is it just the one talking about it?
Subjects. In some cases, people are being fined or arrested just for making a.
Yeah, so they got it here. So, the law under which he was fined here, it wasn't that Buddha was taught how to do the Nazi salute, right? If you look at the case, it was because he said, gas the Jews in his video 32 times in his comedy video, you know? And so putting that out there was what got him fined. It wasn't that, he did the Nazi salutes. Like if Dankula, his video was just that Buddha was doing the Nazi salute and, turn the dog into the worst thing ever, probably would have been fine under those laws. But it was the 32 times or whatever it was he said, gas the Jews.
Offensive jokes, as if it were still in the 1960s. There's a level of irony to all this too. Free speech is the cornerstone of a free society, and trying to prevent the rise of authoritarian ideologies like national or international socialism by engaging in authoritarian policies of our own doesn't make any sense.
So he's a little trying to spread that the Nazis were socialists when they weren't socialists, right? So he's spreading that lie.
But it's not just about policy, it's also about culture. As someone who has often wondered aloud if any truly great satirical movies could still be made in today's easily offended culture, Jojo Rabbit gives me a lot of hope. Cinema as an art form has a long, incredible history of using comedy to deal with tragedy and...
I have to laugh this. I don't know if anybody that's watching this or the YouTube video watches a lot of Todd in the Shadows, but I bring this up because in his one-hit Wonderland video on SR71, he was talking about the failed follow-up was political correctness. So about 20 years ago. So this whole, you can't make a Mel Brooks film today. You can't make a Mel Brooks film today has been said for decades, right? It's literally been the same arguments here. And it's oftentimes by people that completely miss the point of those Mel Brooks films, right? They're the ones that want to go around and say, you can't make a Mel Brooks film today because they were dropping the N-word in Blazing Saddles. And it's like, are we forgetting Django Unchained? And other films set in that time where N-words are dropped all the time still today, right? You can make those films that do it, and you can expect criticism, right? Especially when it goes over the top with it like Django Unchained does. Django Unchained does it an awful lot. Probably to an extreme that's almost like, when iDubbbz was on H3 podcast or whatever, and Ethan kept going, kept using the N slur, F slur catchphrase that iDubbbz had come up with at the time, and just kept using it until iDubbbz himself was like, I feel uncomfortable over here. What are you doing? But those are the people that complain about, the political correctness. We can't make this satire. We can't do any of this other stuff here. And it's like, you can. They've been made here. I mean, hell, 2010, we had a film with an actor completely in blackface, right? That was generally well received. I mean, there was criticism at the time of the film, kind of like, we live in a post-racial society, so it's all right to do blackface for comedy and stuff like that was brought up at the time. But for generally, Tropic Thunder is well liked, well revered, and all that other stuff for what it did. So I just don't see it, and there's probably other films that I'm missing right through here. The Look Who's Back, right, in Germany, where they have some of the strictest laws against Nazi imagery and all that other stuff, was made in Germany, was successful in Germany, right? And so, and probably if it was made here in the U.S., I think they're adapting it and going to do a U.S. version, maybe. It'd be cool if they end up doing it, but I don't know if that's finalized yet. But yeah, that's something that could easily still be made in the U.S. here. that would be go even further than what Jojo Rabbit did.
Poke holes in awful ideas. From Charlie Chaplin and the Marx Brothers to Trey Parker and the Coen Brothers, there are so many examples to draw on.
We're not even talking about money. We're talking about economics.
But there's perhaps no one better at using comedy as a form of intellectual debate than Mel Brooks. Brooks' movie-turned-show-turned-movie, The Producers, is about a charlatan and his accomplice who intentionally try to create a Broadway flop so they can cash in on oversold investments they'll never pay back. The show within the movie they come up with is called Springtime for Hitler. It's written by a delusional Nazi soldier.
Hitler was better looking than Churchill. He was a better dresser than Churchill. He had more hair.
Directed by an idiot.
I never realized that the Third Reich meant Germany. I mean, it's drenched with historical goodies like that.
And starring a buffoon literally named LSD.
Hey, man, you're German. We're all Germans. That's right. That means we cannot attack Germany.
The main character's goal is to be so offensive that people walk out of the play and never come back.
Don't be stupid, be a smarty. Come and join the Nazi party.
But instead, the audience thinks it's hilarious and it becomes an unintentional hit.
How could this happen? I was so careful. I picked the wrong play, the wrong director, the wrong cast. Where did I go right?
In a lot of ways, Jojo Rabbit is Springtime for Hitler without the framing device. It takes something deadly serious like World War II and exposes the utter ridiculousness of Hitler's ideas and of Hitler himself.
I mean, this stuff here that you saw wasn't super deadly serious. That's pretty slapsticky comedy a little bit.
To say a lot of nasty things about me. Oh, this guy's a lunatic. Oh, look at that psycho. He's gonna get us all killed.
But to do this, Jojo Rabbit has to use the same kinds of symbolism and rhetoric that the Nazis used. This is a massively underappreciated part of why free speech is so important. How can you truly understand your own worldview if you aren't actually allowed to engage with the ideas that might contradict it? Even if something someone else says is completely absurd or offensive, it is only by hearing it and wrestling with it that we can begin to seriously defend against it. And I know, some of you are going to say that there are...
So that's the, what is it, Daryl King, I think his name is, that they're showing here in clips from, is, who seems a bit of a charlatan himself, right? Seems kind of be, there's been some articles that have dug into his, he's the guy that made like 200 KKK friends and got him out of the KKK. Or at least that's what it's claimed. Now, when people actually look into the claims that he makes, it's questionable whether he got anybody out of the KKK and managed to challenge them at all and didn't serve as like a shield for the KKK and the members he stood up for, racism and all their hateful acts and stuff, right? So there's he got what was the Brotherhood? There was some KKK or similar similar group named him a friend of that particular organization, right? And he pronounces that as something good, as, oh, I'm changing their mind about black people. And it's like, no, you're being used as the token black to get them off the racism charges, but to kind of undercut claims that they're racist, right? Most times, right? There might be a couple that he's actually gotten out, but for the most part, he hasn't. But he's still held up as if he has.
Ideas that are so bad they don't need to be debated, but that's just a cop-out.
So the issue with debate, especially with debating Nazis and like the KKK and stuff, is they're not honest interlocutors, right? They're looking there to spread their ideas. They're not gonna change their mind. They're not coming to the table to change their minds. And this is getting left out, right? In these debates. And so that's one of the things that comes up.
especially if you care about stopping the spread of a dangerous ideology, failing to understand and confront its arguments won't persuade anyone to give it up. There are people who believe that the Holocaust wasn't real. How do we know they're not right? Because we are free to examine the evidence, listen to the stories of survivors, and talk about what that history was actually like. And we can take that knowledge and evidence and defend against the denier with truth. Confronting our opposition forces us to examine what we know and form better arguments.
So you can confront this stuff without a debate, right? You can become aware of the things that, like, say, Richard Spencer or Holocaust deniers like Nick Fuentes say or do. You don't have to debate them on that topic to understand that topic or to examine it and find out why they're lying or they're wrong. So to give them the platform, give them all the reach, let them all do this stuff and spread this stuff. No, what happens with that is, if you see with like the flat Earth conspiracy and stuff like that on YouTube and stuff, it's a lot of people are just going to pick up that YouTube video and the person's going to say all these things and they're going to say, oh, this is, and they might link back to a neo-Nazi or other Holocaust denial website and for their sources and how they source these comments that aren't true, are ahistorical, all this other stuff. And there's a kind of an ecosystem that develops where they spread all this stuff back and forth between one each other and they source each other. And from there, what they think is, what they propose is true, they can kind of defend as quote unquote true, when it's not. And people that come to these videos and see these videos come away thinking it's true and their minds change and all that other stuff. And they're not so you might be able to get them back, those that come up through it and then fall down, like, say, the alt-right pipeline and stuff like that. You might be able to convince them to come back. But, your better bet to prevent them from going there in the first place is to deplatform, like the Nazis and stuff online.
For our own beliefs. That's a good thing. We need to be able to deal with bad ideas head on. Satire can help us do that. Mel Brooks made a 70-year career out of it. His film Blazing Saddles, co-written with Richard Pryor, might be my favorite comedy of all time. It deals with the ridiculousness of racism by giving a desperate frontier town in the Wild West a smart, competent black sheriff. Blazing Saddles is a perfect counterpoint to racism precisely because it shows it for what it is as it is. Only funnier.
What did you expect? Welcome, Sonny. Make yourself at home. Marry my daughter. You've got to remember that these are just simple farmers. These are people of the land. The common clay of the New West. Morons.
Jojo Rabbit does the same thing with bigotry against Jewish people. It probably features the words Heil Hitler more times than any film in history.
Heil Hitler.
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 It also depicts tons of realistic Nazi propaganda about Jewish people, but it does all of this not to promote anti-Semitism or National Socialism, but instead to make an ironic point challenging those ideas. This is obviously a huge distinction, but it's also a really subtle one. Human expression is complicated. The same words can mean entirely different things depending on our tone of voice or the surrounding context.
And so he's going to come in to show criticism for Jojo Rabbit, that they don't do anything and stuff there, and he's going to pretend that that's like, canceling the free speech to make these things, right? And it's not, like, at all. It's making the criticism, hey, what you set out to do, you flubbed it, in our opinion, right? You made, things like that. So Hitler's too, I forget what they say here, but Hitler's too relatable or things like that. And that's kind of some of the criticisms that came out about Look Who's Back. But in Germany, where those laws are against Nazi imagery and stuff like that, are as strict as they are, was still allowed to be made.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, are the same on paper. But I bet you know that when I changed my tone, I meant the opposite of the literal meaning of the words. Stop and really consider how insane that is. Even a phrase we think of as irredeemable in any context, like Heil Hitler, could be a serious salute to a reprehensible historical figure, or it could be a sarcastic way to show disdain and disrespect. It could even just be a tasteless joke, largely devoid of broader meaning. In Jojo Rabbit, the way that phrase is repeatedly used is even more complex, because it's used by characters who mean it as a genuine salute, but it's set inside a meta context, provided both from the film itself and brought into the movie-going experience by the audience, that makes it absurd. As viewers, we get that Jojo Rabbit is a comedy, and we get that the trajectory of the story is all about Johannes Betzler's enlightenment and realization that the ideas he's believed in his whole life were actually wrong. We also bring in our collected knowledge and our own view of Adolf Hitler as one of history's greatest monsters. So instead of getting angry when we see a little boy say Heil Hitler a dozen times in a row, we laugh. As filmmakers and writers,
but I mean, even in the context of something that isn't satire, right? Something that's trying to do like a historical World War II film and things like that, we wouldn't get outraged to see Heil Hitler in there, right? That's
people like Taika Waititi and Mel Brooks are constantly walking a tightrope, often using hateful rhetoric as a way of highlighting its own stupidity.
The Inquisition, let's begin. The Inquisition, look out, sin. We have a mission to convert the Jews.
But they can only do that in a world where they're allowed to speak and write freely, using the words they need to use without fear of either arrest or cancellation. And it's not like there aren't any critics who think Jojo Rabbit shouldn't have been made. Plenty of people have totally different opinions on what kinds of speech are okay. And that's the thing. Defining what is or is not acceptable speech is...
So just from those headlines, like I said, those are some criticisms of the satire not working and backfiring, right? And things like that. And it's something you think about. I talked about this in other times. Like, even when you're explicit against something, right, there's still going to be people that don't pick up on it, right? So, like, I bring up because we talked about Sargon going off against Rage Against the Machine, and their view of or their music and stuff like that, and how they're hypocrites or whatever. And in that discussion, they brought up the tweet where Tom Morello said, or when somebody brought up and said, hey, it's kind of weird that there's Rage Against the Machine fans that don't realize that their quote-unquote SJWs are far left. And, you know, and it's like, that happens all the time. So even in something where you're explicit, right, in your political views, and you'll say plenty of stuff, you know, God, what's the line from the one song? Those with powers are those that burn crosses, or something like that, is the line. Something explicit like that, calling, you know, some of the leaders in charge as, you know, KKKs and fascists, stuff, all that stuff. There's still right-wing fans of that, right? And another one I brought up in a different video was, you know, The Clash wrote a song called White Riot. And it wasn't about what a lot of the neo-Nazis that picked it up and used it as kind of their anthem in the UK, what it was. And so they went out and had to go and do this anti-racism show. Well, they didn't have to, but they went out and said, no, fuck you guys, we're left-wings, we're not Nazis, we're not, you know, white supremacists pushing for any of that stuff. Right? And had to do an anti-racist show, right? And so these criticisms these show are like, hey, this didn't work quite like you wanted it to. There's places here where it, you know, it's going to do harm, right? Is usually the argument. It's going to do harm with that rhetoric. You're not careful enough with how you constructed it that you're going to create people here. Like I said early in this thing with like the Mel Brooks stuff, like the people that say, oh, you can't make Blazing Saddles today. And it's like, you could make Blazing Saddles today. You just couldn't make, the people that think you can't make it are the people that think it was just because N-bombs were being dropped in the film, right? Kind of like this shithead we're responding to that's saying like, oh, they got to be allowed to use this awful language to be able to do the satire and stuff like that. And like I said, brings up Germany, where they did a satire on Hitler, where Hitler eventually ends up back in power in the modern day. That was allowed to be made. It was a box office success. The book was a bestseller. So, yeah, it's the world he's painting, even with these laws, isn't what it is. It's a lot of, the slippery slope fallacy, right? They're going to say it's going to run into all these things, right? When there's no justification that they are.
Incredibly difficult. But are you willing to put someone else in charge of what you're allowed to hear? I'm not. It's especially not something that I'd like to leave up to humorless, perpetually offended scolds, or worse, algorithms. Facebook and YouTube are notoriously terrible at picking up subtle differences in meaning in human communication. They can filter out bad words and phrases just fine, but what they can't do is judge the intent of the person using them, nor can they accurately understand the point those words are being used to convey. As a result, most of these kinds of automated systems, and the people who oversee them, have become blunt instruments responsible for silencing tons of people who are trying to have important, difficult conversations in the name of shutting down a few bad people with terrible ideas. But we need to have important, difficult conversations. Safe spaces may be comfortable, but we only grow and learn new things about ourselves and the world around us by stepping outside of our comfort zone. Really deeply engaging with ideas.
So this misuse of safe spaces, right? That's not what safe spaces are, right? Changing his buzzwords from safe echo chamber to safe space, right? And getting it wrong. But like the safe spaces is for people to come up who would face like these things like racism or transphobia, homophobia, and the like. And they would come out and, that's for them to feel safe to bring up these experiences and talk about this stuff, right? That's what a safe space is for.
Isn't intellectually or emotionally safe, and you can't debate an idea if you're not allowed to talk about it. That's also what makes Taika Waititi's acceptance speech at the Oscars so sad.
At the end of the war, there was a very clear rule. If you're a Nazi, you went to jail. Now, the rules have changed a bit. If you're a Nazi, feel free to have a rally down in the town square and you can invite all your mates. So something's changed and something's not right.
I know that to a lot of people, this sounds reasonable. But sending people to prison for expressing ideas you don't like doesn't stop the spread of those ideas. It only prevents people from openly debating them.
The Aryans are
So the openly debating stuff, right? They come back in the I don't know if I say fetishization of debate as this catch-all that will resolve everything, right? And it's not, right? Debate is only worthwhile, really, in terms of changing minds or combating ideas, if you're dealing with an honest interlocutor, right? Somebody who's, I have these ideas and I'm coming to the table to better my ideas and, maybe change my mind if something's wrong, right? So you present me with something, I'll say, oh, this is wrong. A lot of debate that happens, especially the online debate sphere, isn't about changing anybody's mind, or isn't about changing your mind or coming up there. It's a platform that you can run out there and spread your ideas and to convince like the audience. It's not there to change, the change there. And for a lot of those, it's really not worth it, right? So bringing, Richard Spencer on to debate. Richard Spencer's stuck into his ideas. He's not going to change them. He doesn't care to change them. And he's going to be all sorts of shifty and dishonest and all that other stuff to at least affect the perception that he won the debate. Right? And so people go look and come to him. Right? But yeah, it's like the debates on these aren't there. And I do some debates, quote unquote debates online and stuff, and I will do some more in the future. a lot of them I do it is for entertainment purposes, right? Like I'm somebody that's an entertainer. I'm spreading my ideas, doing all that other stuff there, and that's why I do the debates, right? It's not for me to change my debate person's opinion or anything like that.
1,000 times more civilized and advanced than any other race. Now get your things together, kids. It's time to burn some books!
The truth is, we allow Nazis freedom of speech in part because that freedom is essential for all of us to defend against Nazi ideology. Without that right, we would neither be able to openly discuss these ideas and expose them for what they are, nor use their own language and imagery to lampoon them. As a Jewish soldier who fought in World War II, Mel Brooks understood.
I mean, like I said, I keep bringing it up, but Look Who's Back was made in Germany. The most repressive laws against Nazi symbolism and stuff like that this video is complaining about, and it was made. It was a hit. It was a best-selling book. It was a hit in the box office. So it's like, we can put these laws into place and other things like that if you want to. Now, whether or not we should or not is something you can discuss, but let's not pretend that laws can't be put in place that can target some of these things and not catch the catch people that shouldn't be caught up in them, right?
Understands this better than anybody.
Get on a soapbox with Hitler, you're going to lose. He's a great orator. But if you can make fun of him, if you can have people laugh at him, you win. And that's my job, to make terrible things entertaining.
And so part of Mel Brooks's speech right there is don't go and debate Hitler, right? Which this whole video is trying to take the satire and the comedy and say, well, we should be debating the neo-Nazis and the KKK and stuff like that. And it's like, especially the ones that are, better speakers. And like, no, right? That's not what Mel Brooks is about.
Taika Waititi lived in the world he vaguely proposed in his Oscar speech. He might not have even been able to make the movie at all without violating the law. Jojo Rabbit.
Again, Germany, some of the strongest anti-Nazi symbols, legislation, had one where at the end of the satire film, Hitler was in power of Germany again, right? So this is all bullshit fear-mongering.
Is a wonderful film, but in addition to internalizing its overt message of cultural tolerance, I think we should also be aware that there's a meta lesson.
Wait. Where was the overt message of cultural tolerance? In what you provided here and that, right? You said the whole film, or at least how you framed the meta narrative and stuff there was to shit on Nazi and other Nazi ideology and quote unquote culture, right? So you're trying to have it both ways here and speak out of both sides of your mouth.
Lesson about free speech here too. In a world where even people who make brilliant satire about repressive regimes don't understand that calling for legal restrictions on speech is I
don't know if The Dictator was quite a satire on repressive regimes, right? And I like The Dictator. It's a funny movie. But it's just like a scripted Bruno or oh my god, why am I forgetting the big one? Borat film, right? Where he basically plays that same character, or at least a modified version of that for the dictator, right? As a dictator, and he's doing all this stuff here. But I don't know if I'd call that quite a brilliant satire.
Exactly the kind of thing that makes a regime.
All right, well, and I bet this is Facebook for, and some of the other ones for the longest time allowed, to basically say whatever the hell you want as long as you paid for it, right? As long as you got money. So you could spread the reach of, propaganda and stuff like this, so which would make Facebook the greatest propaganda machine, just by spending money. So people that wanted to spread shitty propaganda pay enough money they can do it here. And that's going to be the likely the crux of the argument Baron Cohen is making.
Repressive in the first place, we've got a difficult battle ahead, but it's not too late. We can all stand up for a strong culture of free speech and fight against state censorship at the same time. The next time you're offended by something someone else says, instead of hitting block or reporting them, consider just closing your browser tab or changing the channel. When you think,
wait, why wouldn't you block somebody? I don't get that. You know, if somebody says something you don't want to see in there is, you know, being a racist, a homophobe, a transphobe, all those things, yeah, go ahead and block them. Why not block them?
someone else's ideas are horrible.
Or report them when it's actually hateful conduct directed at their, like, I've reported stuff on there for hate speech and stuff like that. So there was one I reported that basically, you know, with the Ninja Turtles comic going on hiatus, the writer's a trans woman. The current writer of it is a trans woman. And somebody said they wanted to see her in the ground, right? You know, before the book came back. And I reported that, right? That's bullshit, right? You should report that kind of stuff.
Try having a conversation with them to change their mind instead of...
Again, those people aren't trying to change their minds, right? You know, it's kind of the one thing I've learned being online as much as I have over the last couple of years. A lot of people aren't entering these conversations to have a real conversation, and that's a lot of the criticism to, well, just let them speak, or, hey, if you don't like what they say, you should debate them, and stuff like that. And it's like, they're not going to change they're not there to change their mind. They're not there to do it, you know. Now, there are people who are honest interlocutors and might want to have that conversation. And those people, yeah, go have a conversation with them, right? Because you can change their mind. They're being honest with you. But a lot of these people that they don't want to see deplatformed or taken off, you know, the Alex Jones, the Milo Yiannopoulos of the world, and the like, those people aren't there to change their mind. They're making money to say that awful shit, right? It's profitable for them to say that awful shit. They're not in there to change it. Fuck that. They just want the platform so they can grow their audience and their reach and stuff like that and make more money.
Of shouting at them, acting violently, or trying to ruin their lives. And when some celebrity or politician says that the world would be a better place if no one were allowed to say the things they don't like, remind them that they don't get to decide what everyone else is allowed to hear.
So people aren't saying the things that you don't like, right? I mean, this is the silly straw man they want to prop up and then go out and advocate for, you know, like the Nazis and stuff like that. Like they're doing some moral good.
You decide for yourself. The more we stand up for the value of free speech and open debate, the stronger our society will become, and the easier it will be to prevent hateful, authoritarian ideologies from taking over the world ever again.
I mean, a lot of people would say that's bullshit, right? I mean, a lot of people look at the United States, look at Trump and all that other stuff, and it's like, really? The open debate and discussion didn't get rid of this stuff, right? Like, at all. And it's grown and allowed to grow more popular. And that's a lot of, like, that'd be like Taika Waititi's criticism in the clip that they showed at his acceptance speech. But I don't know, that's the end of this one.